hell of a, she's so fine. Hell of a, blows my mind. Hell of a, lights my day.
Hey guys, today is Tuesday, July 28, 2020, and I was reading the Chicago Tribune because I usually read it in the morning, and I had something going on this morning that kind of threw off my whole schedule. But I went back and was reading it this evening, and they have a morning paper and then they have an evening edition. So I was reading the morning edition, then I finished it and jumped to the evening edition. So I come across this article titled "Chicago Police Mourn the Loss of a Deputy Chief to Apparent Suicide." It's wrote by Jeremy Gorner and Annie Sweeney, both with the Chicago Tribune, and they published it at 5:32 this evening. Okay, and there's a picture. It says Chicago firefighters put away a large American flag outside the Cook County Medical Examiner's office in Chicago today following a procession for a high-ranking police officer who died at the Holman Square Police Facility on the west side. And the photo is courtesy of Jose M. Osorio, who is also with the Chicago Tribune. It says a Chicago police deputy chief was found dead Tuesday morning in an apparent suicide, police leaders said. The highest-ranking department member in recent memory to take their own life. Dion Boyd was found shot to death at the Holman Square Police Facility on the west side. He was identified by Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown at a Tuesday afternoon news conference. During brief remarks at police headquarters, Brown talked about the family and friends Boyd left behind. Quote, "Many lives will be forever changed from this moment on," said Brown, flanked by other police officials. "And Deputy Chief Boyd's presence will be greatly missed. I ask you to keep his family and friends in your thoughts and prayers," end quote. Boyd had recently been promoted to Deputy Chief of Criminal Networks, which focuses on long-term gang and narcotics investigations. An autopsy is scheduled for Wednesday at the Cook County Medical Examiner's office. If the office rules his death a suicide, Boyd would be at least the 10th Chicago cop to die by suicide in 2 years. Boyd was promoted to deputy chief earlier this month after serving in several lower-ranking leadership roles, including as commander of the Wentworth Patrol District, which covers such South Side neighborhoods as Hyde Park, Washington Park, and Bronzeville. A 29-year CPD veteran, Boyd also served as a field lieutenant earlier in his career in the Calumet Patrol District, covering such far South Side neighborhoods as Roseland and West Pullman. He also worked as a sergeant in the Bureau of Internal Affairs and in a detective unit on the South Side. Quote, "The job of a Chicago police officer is not easy, particularly in a time where there is intensified stress," Brown said as he addressed the loss of Boyd. "Every day life can seem insurmountable at times for anyone, but for police officers the stakes are even higher due to the tireless work they do to safeguard others," end quote. Police supervisors who have worked directly with Boyd described him as an upbeat and positive boss who pushed officers to do their best. Quote, "He was always happy," said one Southside supervisor who declined to be identified because he's not authorized to speak to reporters. "He appeared to always be in good spirits, a lot of energy," end quote. The supervisor said Boyd was the boss who notified him when he got a promotion. At one point, the supervisor recalled, Boyd offered words of encouragement, telling him to, quote, keep doing what you're doing, so that other bosses notice and promote him even further. Within the last 2 months, the supervisor said, he witnessed Boyd give, quote, inspirational, end quote, words to a group of officers amid the national unrest, including in Chicago, following the May 25th death of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minnesota. Quote, you guys keep your heads up, the supervisor said, paraphrasing Boyd's remarks. We're going to weather this storm together, end quote. Keith Calloway, a former top-ranking Chicago police officer, said he knew Boyd for more than 20 years and worked with him in internal affairs at one point. Quote, always a hard worker, very tenacious, Calloway said of Boyd. Very mild-mannered, he was always easygoing to work with, end quote. Another supervisor recalled how Boyd made a point to check in and offer encouraging words in the department's recent difficult months. Quote, he always wanted to make sure the officers were okay, said the supervisor, who was not authorized to speak on the record to the Tribune. He would say, listen, you go through these down times, but everything is going to get better. Just hang in there, end quote. The supervisor noted that Boyd's suicide provided him with a critical reminder. Quote, no matter how upbeat someone is, you still need to check on them, end quote, he said. During Boyd's time as head of Wentworth, one of his officers, Samuel Jimenez, was shot and killed by a gunman at Mercy Hospital and Medical Center in November of 2018. During the incident, the gunman also fatally shot his fiancée, who was an emergency room doctor at the hospital, and a pharmacist, before dying in a shootout with police. Scores of officers in marked and unmarked squad cars, with their emergency lights activated but no sirens, escorted the police official's body in the procession from Homan Square to the medical examiner's office Tuesday. The cars rode between two fire trucks where an American flag was draped between the truck's two elevated ladders. The Chicago Police Department's problem with officer suicides was highlighted in a 2017 report by the U.S. Justice Department of the city's policing practices. At that time, one Chicago police official told the Justice Department that CPD's officer suicide rate was higher than the national average. Quote, to our men and women in uniform, please know that there is no shame in reaching out for help, Brown said. If you see any signs that your colleagues are having trouble coping with stress, please check in on them and let them know you're there, end quote. And it also says that WGN Channel 9 contributed to the article. There's just something about this wording of this article that's a little off to me. And it may be just me. Completely could just be me. But the way they've worded this sentence in the second paragraph, the very first sentence. Dion Boyd was found shot to death at the Homan Square police facility on the west side. It just, I don't know. It just didn't sit well with me how they worded that, shot to death. And I know from just doing research on Chicago that Homan Square police facility has been involved in multiple controversies and scandals. So I don't know about this. Something just doesn't sit right with me about it. And honestly, I don't trust them enough to... honestly, I don't even trust the Cook County Medical Examiner's office enough to do a whole lot of anything. That's just my personal opinion. Because I've seen so many cases where they have messed up. And where they have taken bribes and all of that good stuff. But, you know, I know that people describe people in their best light once they have passed away. That's a very common thing that you hear. But just from the comments from these police officers, it genuinely sounds like this guy was a good guy. I don't know. it's a little strange to me how they worded that. And then, how they said here, if the office rules his death as suicide. What do you mean, if they rule it as suicide? I thought that's what the whole article was about. So that kind of threw me for a loop, too. I know this is not Rosemont and this is Chicago, but, and I also heard along the way several times that there have been several Rosemont police officers who have taken their own lives. And honestly, I've done a lot of research on that. And I can't find a single Rosemont police officer, while they were actively on the Village of Rosemont's, what do they call that? On their police force, either an auxiliary officer or otherwise, that has been listed as someone who has taken their own life. And specifically from the time of the Kanika Jenkins incident forward. And that's really where I focused my energy on trying to find someone, because, you know, the rumors and the rumor mill was that several Rosemont police officers couldn't take the pressure, and they knew they had done dirty and blah, 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 and then they had taken their own life, but I never could find anything to back that up. And trust me, I looked and looked and looked and spent many a day looking for that information, but was unable to find it. But yeah, this article just did not sit well with me. 29-year veteran, sounds like he's ran the gamut of jobs as far as working his way up the ladder, and then to just have hold on, to recently have been promoted to deputy chief of criminal networks. It sounds like, just from the outside looking in, that everything was going great for him. But I know, we can't see what's on the inside. I'm not saying it did or didn't happen. I'm just saying the way this article is worded is a little bit off. This is an image that I found of Dion Boyd, Officer Dion Boyd. I don't know, something just doesn't sit right with me about it. I don't know if anybody else got that feeling when they heard the article, but I don't know, there's something about it that, very well decorated. Just is a little strange. I'm going to keep my eye on this. Of course, he's with Brown there on the left. David Brown. What is he? I think the superintendent. But I wanted to bring this story to you guys. It is a little bit dated because they found him, I think it said yesterday. No, it was actually this morning when they found him. So I'll be interested to see just what this autopsy says. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning. I'm not saying that everything that the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office puts out is fake or phony. That's not what I'm saying. But I just have a really hard time putting all my trust into an organization that is so I guess the word I'm looking for is just non-transparent who have had the controversies that they've had as far as bribery and botched autopsies where they've had to redo thousands of autopsies because of one examiner. And I'd just say they have had more controversies than the average medical examiner's office. I'll say that because I believe that's a pretty factual statement. But it is hard to trust a facility or an organization that has had the checkered past that the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office has had. I'm not saying they can't turn it around, but yeah. But regardless, I wanted to get this out, and I hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for listening and watching.